On a quiet city night, deep in the redwood forest, a little girl with trembling hands whispered her father's name, but the only thing that answered was silence. What could make a billionaire walk away from his own sickle cell daughter? What shame could be so powerful that it blinded him to her tears? This is a story of pain, betrayal, and the miracle of strangers who became family. A story that will break your heart, rebuild it, and remind you that sometimes the people who save us are not the ones who share our blood, but the ones who choose to stay. The night the trees learned her name. The night had a strange stillness to it, one of those quiet American summer nights where the air feels thick, heavy, and watchful. It was the kind of night that held its breath before something unforgettable happened. The kind of night that seemed too calm for what was coming. Fireflies blinked in slow, lazy patterns above the tall grass, and the moon hovered like an unfinished story waiting to be told. But none of that beauty mattered to 12-year-old Maya Caldwell, whose small chest rose and fell in uneven breaths, each one sounding like a whispered plea. She was curled in the back seat of her father's glossy black SUV, her head leaning against the cool window. Sweat dotted her forehead, and her hands trembled slightly, even though the night breeze drifting into the car was gentle. Her father, Alexander Caldwell, sat rigid behind the steering wheel. His jaw was clenched so tightly that a thin vein pulsed at his temple. He tapped his fingers against the leather steering wheel, not out of impatience, but out of a fear he refused to name. He wore a dark suit, even though the hour was late, and his expensive wristwatch gleamed faintly every time the moonlight broke through the forest canopy. The billionaire real estate mogul, who bragged everywhere about strength, power, and perfection, had never felt so small, because tonight he had made a decision he couldn't reverse, a decision that had led them deep into Redwood State Forest, miles from the nearest road, miles from anyone who could hear a little girl's faint whisper. Maya coughed softly. Her voice trembled as she tried to sit up. "Daddy, where are we going? It's late." He didn't answer. His fingers tightened. "Daddy," she repeated, this time weaker. "My chest hurts again." He swallowed hard. "It's just fresh air. The trees help." His voice sounded flat, rehearsed. "You'll be fine." Maya tried to smile, because she always tried, even when the pain flared through her ribs like sparks. Mom used to say trees cure sadness. She said they were like giants that protected people. The mention of her mother made Alexander flinch. It was a wound he kept bandaged behind a wall of status and city lights, but the bandage always tore a little whenever Maya spoke her name. "Daddy?" Maya whispered again, confused. "Why are we so far?" Alexander looked at her through the rearview mirror. And for a brief second, just one, his eyes softened. Maya had always had that effect. Her vulnerability stripped away the layers of power and pride he hid inside. But then the softness vanished. The forest path narrowed. The headlights carved tunnels of light between tall redwoods. The silence grew heavier, as if the woods themselves sensed the truth he refused to speak aloud. Shame. That was the word haunting him, strangling him. Shame he didn't want to acknowledge out loud. Shame he didn't want the world to see him carrying. Shame that whispered cruel lies about image, status, and legacy. His daughter, his only child, was born with sickle cell disease, a condition that made every moment unpredictable, painful, fragile. He loved her, of course he did, but love had been drowned by the pressure of a world that worshipped perfection and mocked weakness. Investors whispered. Social circles commented. Business partners gave sympathetic smiles that felt more like accusations. They never said it directly, but their eyes did. A man like him shouldn't have a burden like this. A man of his stature was supposed to have a perfect life, a powerful future, a strong heir. Not a child who visited hospitals more than playgrounds. Not a child whose body betrayed her joy. Not a child who made him feel visible in the wrong way. And so tonight, he convinced himself he was doing the hard but necessary thing. Something he had rationalized for weeks. He told himself Maya would be safer away from him, away from the pressure, away from the life he built, that someone else, somewhere else, would treat her better. He told himself lies that almost sounded like truth. Almost. He slowed the car. The tires crunched over fallen leaves. The trees stood tall, their shadows stretching out like long fingers across the forest floor. Maya blinked. Her voice grew faint. "Daddy, are we lost?" "No," he muttered. "We're here." "Here?" she echoed, confused. "For what?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The car rolled to a stop in a clearing, where moonlight pooled like pale silver water. The forest surrounded them in every direction, endless and dark. For a few seconds, the only sound was Maya's breath. Then, Alexander turned off the engine. The headlights faded, swallowing them into deeper darkness. "Daddy?" Maya whispered, fear trickling into her voice. Alexander stepped out without answering. The moment the car door shut, Maya felt her heart sink in a way pain medicine couldn't fix. She pushed the door open slowly and followed him out, her legs wobbly. She hugged her small jacket around her. Though the night wasn't cold, she just felt cold inside. The moonlight revealed a path between the trees. Alexander walked ahead, his footsteps quick, stiff. Maya hurried to catch up. "What are we doing here?" she asked, trying to sound brave. He didn't look at her. "We're going for a walk," he muttered. "At midnight?" she whispered. He inhaled sharply, his breath shaking. "Just follow me, Maya." The forest was alive with sounds: a distant owl, rustling branches, the whisper of wind threading through leaves. Maya held her father's hand, though he barely squeezed back. Every few steps, she winced quietly. The ache in her bones had grown worse that day. But she didn't want to bother him. He already looked worried. She always hated worrying him. They reached a small clearing, surrounded by towering trees. Fireflies drifted lazily around them like tiny lanterns. Alexander stopped walking. Maya did too. She waited for him to say something, anything. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Maya blinked. "Daddy? Are you okay?" His breath trembled. He looked at her the way someone looks at the sun before a storm swallows it. Then he knelt down and gently removed her backpack. "Daddy," she whispered, "why are you taking my bag?" He didn't answer. He placed it at the base of a tree. "Daddy?" Her voice cracked. "Why?" Alexander forced himself to stand again, but his knees felt weak. A war raged inside him. One side whispered, "You're doing this to protect her from the pressure of your world." The other side screamed, "You're abandoning your child." But the louder voice, the cruel voice of pride, won. He took a shaky step back. Then, another. "Daddy?" Maya called, her voice quivering now. "Where are you going?" He didn't turn around. "Daddy, I can't walk fast," she whispered, tears rising. "Please wait." He kept walking. "Daddy." Her voice broke. "Please don't leave me. Please don't." He stopped. His entire body froze. Her sobs shook the air. "Daddy, I'm scared." Alexander closed his eyes. His heart thrashed painfully in his chest. Every instinct screamed for him to go back, to hold her, to forget pride and shame and everything else. But fear of society, fear of judgment tightened around him like chains. And he made the biggest mistake of his life. He whispered, barely loud enough for the trees to hear, I'm sorry, Maya." Then he walked faster. "No!" Maya cried, stumbling forward. "Daddy! Daddy! Please!" Her voice chased him, fragile and desperate. Her small footsteps faltered as she tried to run. The pain in her legs shot upward like lightning. She fell to her knees, but he didn't turn. He didn't look back. He didn't let himself. He reached the car, hands shaking violently, and unlocked it with trembling fingers. For a moment, he hesitated again, his soul begging him to stop this madness. Then he slid into the driver's seat. He put the keys in the ignition. Maya's faint voice carried through the trees. "Daddy, don't leave me, please." His chest cracked open in agony. He shut his eyes tightly, but he drove away. The sound of the engine roared painfully against the silence. Trees blurred past as he sped down the dirt path, each second pulling him farther from his daughter. And the forest swallowed Maya's cries. Back in the clearing, Maya's sobs quieted into shaky breaths. She sat on the dirt, hugging her knees, trying to convince herself she was dreaming. But dreams didn't feel this real. Dreams didn't hurt this much. Her chest ached, not just from the pain of her illness, but from something deeper. Something that tightened around her like an invisible fist. Her father had left, and he wasn't coming back. She wiped her tears with trembling hands. "Dad, you said I was your sunrise. You said you'd always stay." Another wave of pain spread across her ribs. She gasped softly. "Mom," she whispered into the darkness. "What did I do wrong?" The wind didn't answer. The trees didn't answer. She felt smaller than she ever had, swallowed by shadows that seemed too big. But even in her fear, even in her confusion, she didn't give up. She looked around, and that was when she saw it. A pair of glowing eyes in the distance. They blinked once, twice. Then another pair appeared beside it. And another. Her breath hitched. She wasn't alone. The forest was alive and watching. Fireflies dimmed. Branches swayed with a strange, deliberate rhythm, as if the trees themselves were whispering something ancient. Maya trembled, but she gathered what little courage she had left. Her voice cracked as she whispered into the night. "Please, somebody help me." And the forest listened. For the first time in its long, quiet life, it listened. Back on the highway, Alexander drove as if chased by his own shadow. His hands shook violently. His breath came in short bursts. Every few seconds, he heard her voice echoing in his mind. "Daddy, don't leave me." He slammed a fist against the steering wheel. The car swerved slightly before he corrected it. His chest tightened with a suffocating grief. He had built skyscrapers. He had conquered industries. He had mastered boardrooms. But he had just destroyed the one thing that had ever truly made him human. He pulled over suddenly, unable to breathe. His vision blurred as tears filled his eyes, real tears. Not the contained ones he hid at charity events or funerals. These were raw and uncontrolled. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the darkness. "I'm sorry, Maya. But apologies spoken to empty air don't reach people who need them. Especially not little girls alone in a forest." Alexander wiped his face aggressively, as if trying to erase the guilt. He stared at his trembling hands, hands that had built empires but had failed to hold onto the most fragile part of his world. He knew he should turn back. He knew he should. But shame twisted his thoughts again. "Someone will find her," he told himself. "It's a national park. She'll be okay. She's strong. This is better for her. This is better for you." He forced the car back onto the road and kept driving, further and further away. Back in the forest, Maya crawled toward her abandoned backpack. She pressed her palm to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. Inside her bag was the last photo she had with both parents taken when she was 6, before her mother passed, before her father's heart hardened, before sickness made her feel like a burden. She held the photo against her chest. "I'm not bad," she whispered. "I'm not something to hide." The forest rustled softly, almost like a sympathetic sigh. A small figure stepped into the moonlit clearing. Not a wild animal. A person. A young teenage boy wearing a worn hoodie and carrying a flashlight. He froze when he saw her. Maya's eyes widened. He took a cautious step forward. "Hey, are you okay?" She couldn't answer. She could only cry. The boy knelt beside her, his face full of worry. "Did you get lost? Are you hurt?" She nodded weakly. He glanced around. "Is your family here?" Her silence answered him. He swallowed. A tear slid down her cheek. He reached out a hand gently. "Don't worry. My parents work at the ranger station. I'll get you help. You're safe now. Safe." The word felt unreal, but Maya clung to it anyway. The boy helped her stand. She leaned against him, her small body trembling. "What's your name?" she whispered. He smiled softly. "Evan." She nodded faintly. "I'm Maya." And just like that, her story began to change. Not because the pain disappeared, not because the night wasn't frightening, but because someone finally chose to stay. Someone chose to listen. Someone chose to help. And in the shadows of the forest, the universe made a quiet promise. This was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning. The forest that returned what the world threw away. For the first few minutes after Evan found her, Maya felt like she was floating half in the real world, half in the shadow of everything she had just lost. Her steps were uncertain. Her breaths were short, shaky, fragile. Each time she blinked, the image of her father walking away flashed before her eyes. But Evan didn't let go of her hand. Not once. He walked beside her slowly, adjusting his pace to match her weak steps. His flashlight carved a narrow tunnel of light through the trees. "Just a little bit more," he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might break her. "The ranger cabin is close." Maya didn't answer. She could barely speak. Her throat felt tight, and the forest seemed to echo with ghosts of the past 20 minutes. But Evan understood silence. He didn't rush her. He didn't ask questions. He just stayed, which was something she hadn't felt in a long time. A wooden cabin finally appeared through the trees. Warm light spilled through its windows, cutting through the dark like a promise. When Maya saw it, tears gathered again, this time not because of fear, but because safety suddenly felt real. Real enough to touch. Evan pushed open the door. "Mom, Dad." Two adults looked up from a desk, stacked with maps and paperwork. His mother, a woman with kind eyes and curly hair, tied back in a bun, stood immediately. "What happened?" she asked, rushing forward. Evan guided Maya inside. She was alone. In the woods, she looked sick. Maya stumbled slightly. Evan's mother caught her gently. "Oh, sweetheart," she murmured. "You're burning up." They helped her to a couch. Maya sank onto it, her small body trembling from exhaustion, pain, and shock. Evan's father, a tall ranger with steady hands and a calm voice, grabbed a first aid kit and knelt beside her. "We're going to take care of you, okay? You're safe now." Safe. The word hit her again, softer this time. She nodded weakly. "Can you tell us your name?" the mother asked. "Maya." "How old are you, Maya?" 12. The parents exchanged a look. They could already tell there was more to the story, something heavy, something painful, but they didn't push. They didn't assume. They simply cared. Evan handed Maya a cup of water. "Here, small sips." She took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you." He sat beside her on the floor, cross-legged, watching her with worried eyes. He didn't seem afraid of her illness or fragile appearance. He just seemed relieved she wasn't alone in the woods anymore. "What were you doing out there?" he asked gently. Maya looked down. Her throat tightened. My dad," she whispered. But the rest of the sentence died in her mouth. The ranger's wife placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to say anything yet." Maya nodded, tears welling up again. She wanted to be strong. But everything hurt, inside and out. About an hour later, after checking her temperature, listening to her breathing, and ensuring she wasn't in immediate medical danger, Evan's parents exchanged another glance. "We need to get her to the hospital," the father said quietly. Maya's eyes widened. "No, don't call my dad." "Honey," the mother said softly, "we won't call anyone until we understand what happened. But you're not well. We need to make sure you're okay." Maya swallowed hard. "It hurts, here." She pressed her hand to her chest. The ranger nodded. "That's why the doctors need to see you." She nodded faintly, defeated. For the first time in years, she wasn't hiding her pain. She wasn't pretending she was okay. She wasn't trying to be brave for her father. She was simply a girl who needed help, and she was finally receiving it. They gathered what they needed and stepped outside. Evan held her hand again, guiding her to their small ranger truck. She leaned against him, coughing softly. "I won't leave," he whispered. "Not even for a second." The words settled into her heart like warm light. She believed him. The hospital was almost an hour away. During the drive, Maya drifted in and out of consciousness. The pain grew worse, spreading through her chest, her arms, her legs. Evan sat beside her, holding her hand with both of his. "Hey," he whispered whenever her breathing hitched. "You're doing great. We're almost there." His voice was steady, warm, grounding. She clung to it. When the truck finally pulled into the emergency entrance, nurses rushed out with a stretcher. "She's in crisis," the ranger explained quickly. "Found her alone in the forest. No adult with her." The nurses moved fast. One took her vitals. Another placed oxygen near her face. Another prepared an IV. But Maya refused to let go of Evan's hand. "Come with me," she whispered. He didn't hesitate. "I'm right here." He walked beside the stretcher as they wheeled her into the ER. Doctors shouted instructions. Machines beeped. Bright lights blurred into white streaks. And Maya's world faded, but not into darkness, into memory. She remembered her mother's gentle voice, reading stories beside her bed. She remembered her father smiling at her birthday parties when she was younger before grief swallowed him. She remembered laughter, warmth, safety. But then the memories shifted. Hospital rooms, needles, nights crying quietly so her father wouldn't worry, school friends drifting away. And then the clearing. The moment she realized she wasn't wanted, that she was left. Her chest tightened. Her small hand squeezed Evan's with the last bit of strength she had. "Don't leave." Evan leaned close. "I won't, I promise." Then everything went black. When Maya woke again, the smell of antiseptic filled the air. The room was dim except for a soft lamp. Machines beeped steadily. An IV dripped medicine into her fragile veins. But she wasn't alone. Evan sat in a chair beside her bed, head resting against the edge, asleep. His fingers were wrapped loosely around her hand, as if even sleep couldn't convince him to let go. His mother was on the other side of the room, speaking quietly to a doctor. "She's stabilized," the doctor said. "Her condition is manageable, but she's been under significant stress. Emotional trauma can trigger or worsen a crisis." His mother sighed. "We won't let her go back to whatever situation she came from. Not until we know she's safe." Maya blinked slowly. They cared, truly cared. The doctor glanced toward her. "Oh, she's awake." Evan jerked upright suddenly, rubbing his eyes. "Maya? Maya! You're awake." She offered him the faintest smile. "You stayed." "Of course I did." The doctor approached gently. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she whispered. Her body still hurt, but her heart felt a little lighter. When the nurse left the room, Evan's mother pulled a chair to the bedside. "Maya," she said gently, "we don't want to pressure you, but we need to know. What happened? How did you end up alone in a place like that?" The words tasted like broken glass. Her lips trembled. She stared at her blanket, fingers twisting the fabric. "My dad," she whispered. The room went very still. She swallowed hard, tears gathering. "He drove me there. He said the trees had fresh air. He walked me to the clearing." Her voice cracked. "And he left." Evan inhaled sharply. His mother covered her mouth with her hand, horrified. Evan's father clenched his jaw. "He abandoned you? In a national forest?" Maya nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I don't know why. I'm not bad. I don't make trouble. I promise I don't. I just get sick sometimes." Evan stood and sat carefully on the edge of her bed. "Maya," he whispered, "you didn't deserve any of that." She shook her head slowly. "Maybe I did. Maybe I'm too much." "No," Evan said firmly, voice breaking with emotion. "You're not too much. He was wrong. What he did was wrong." She covered her face and sobbed softly, years of silent tears finally breaking free. Evan hugged her gently. "You're not alone anymore." Meanwhile, miles away, Alexander Caldwell sat in his penthouse apartment, staring at the city skyline. Lights shimmered across glass towers, the world moving on as if nothing had happened. But he couldn't move. Not really. Every time he blinked, he saw Maya's face. Her tears, her fear, her voice. "Daddy, please." He hadn't eaten. He hadn't slept. He just sat there, gripped by a guilt so heavy he could barely breathe. His phone buzzed suddenly. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, he picked it up. A message from an unknown number. "Your daughter has been found. She's safe at Riverside Hospital. The authorities will want to speak with you." His breath caught. Safe. hospital, authorities. His heart hammered. For the first time since he drove away, he stood, and he ran for his keys. Back at the hospital, Maya sat up slowly as nurses checked her vitals. Evan's mother fed her small spoonfuls of soup. Evan told her stories to make her smile, and she did smile. Not wide, not brightly, but enough. Enough to show she was still fighting. Later that afternoon, a soft knock sounded on the door. Evan's father opened it. A police officer stood outside, and behind him, Alexander Caldwell. Maya froze. Her heartbeat quickened, not from love or relief, from fear. Her father looked nothing like the man who left her. His eyes were red. His hands shook. His suit was wrinkled. His expression was shattered. "Maya," he whispered. She looked away. He stepped forward. She flinched. Evan moved closer to her, protective without even thinking. The officer spoke quietly. "Mr. Caldwell, before you say anything to your daughter, you need to understand that this is now considered abandonment and child endangerment. We need an official statement." Alexander nodded numbly. I understand." He stepped closer to the bed, voice trembling. "Maya, I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable." Maya stared at her hands, silent. Alexander's breath shook as he knelt beside her bed. "I failed you," he whispered. "I let fear and pride control me. I thought your illness made me look weak. I thought people would judge me." He covered his face with his hands. "I forgot my job wasn't to protect my reputation. It was to protect you." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Maya's voice came out small, tired. "Why wasn't I enough for you?" His heart shattered. "You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't." Silence stretched painfully. Maya finally looked at him, eyes tired, hurt, older than 12. "Are you here because you want me?" she whispered. "Or because you got caught?" He broke, truly broke. "I'm here because I love you. Because I should have turned back the moment I walked away. Because I will spend the rest of my life trying to make this right." Her voice trembled. "But how do I trust you?" He swallowed hard. "By letting me earn it. Slowly, patiently, one day at a time." Evan's parents watched quietly, giving Maya space. Maya wiped her tears slowly. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet." "You don't have to," he whispered. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned away, not out of hate, out of pain, and that hurt him more than shouting ever could have. The officer cleared his throat softly. "Mr. Caldwell, we need you outside." Alexander nodded, but before leaving, he leaned close. "Maya, even if you never forgive me, I will never leave you again." She didn't answer, but the silence wasn't a door closing. It was simply a wound that needed time. He left the room. Days passed. Maya grew stronger. Doctors adjusted her medication. Evan visited her every day. His parents brought her books, warm meals, soft blankets. People chose her, without pressure, without shame, without conditions. At the end of the week, a social worker spoke gently to her. "You have options, Maya. You can stay in temporary foster care with Evan's family while things are resolved. Or, if you want to try, you can return to your father under supervision." Maya looked out the window, watching sunlight spill across the hospital courtyard. For the first time, she chose for herself. "I want to stay with Evan's family for now," she said softly. "I'm not ready to go back." The social worker nodded. "That's okay. You're allowed to choose what feels safe." When Maya told Evan's family, they embraced her gently. "You're part of our home now," Evan's mother whispered. "For as long as you need." Evan grinned. "Told you I wouldn't leave." Maya smiled, small, but real. Meanwhile, Alexander attended mandatory counseling, legal meetings, and parenting classes. He faced consequences, accepted them, and didn't run from responsibility anymore. And every day, he came to the hospital or the ranger cabin. Sometimes Maya allowed him to sit with her. Sometimes she didn't, but he came anyway. Quiet, humbled, trying. step by step, slowly building a bridge where a forest once broke them apart. Months later, on a bright autumn afternoon, Maya stood at the edge of the same forest clearing. Not afraid, not abandoned, not alone. Evan stood beside her, holding her hand. His family stood behind them, talking softly. And a few feet away, Alexander watched her not as a billionaire, not as a man obsessed with image, but as a father who finally understood that love was not something to hide. Maya looked at the trees, the same trees that witnessed her pain, now witnessing her healing. Mom used to say trees are giants that protect people, she whispered. Evan nudged her lightly. Looks like they protected you for real. She smiled. Then she turned slightly toward her father. Her voice was soft, fragile, but hopeful. Dad, I'm not ready to forgive everything yet. He nodded. I know. But, she continued, I'm ready to try. If you are, Alexander's throat tightened. I am, every day. She took one small step toward him, not a sprint, not a leap, just a step, a beginning. And Alexander's tears fell as the forest breeze wrapped gently around them, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. Because the night she was abandoned did not define her. The forest that saved her did, the people who chose her did, and the strength she found within herself, that was hers alone. Her story did not end in the clearing where she was left. It began there. And from that moment forward, Maya Caldwell was never invisible again. She was never unwanted again. She was never alone again. Because people finally saw her, and she finally saw herself, not as a burden, not as a weakness, but as a light that refused to go out. The little girl who survived the forest became the girl who learned to live. Maya's story shows us something powerful. Even when the people we trust the most fail us, life can send unexpected angels to pull us back into the light. She walked into the forest as a forgotten child, but she walked out as someone seen, loved, and protected. And her father's journey reminds us that mistakes, no matter how heavy, don't have to be the end. Not when we are willing to change, to grow, and to fight for forgiveness. Remember this. Family is not only who we are born from, family is who refuses to let us stand alone. If this story touched your soul, you can do well by subscribing to our channel, like, and tell us the country you are watching from.